Welcome back to another episode of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, where we motivate you, we inspire you. And man, today we're going to educate you. We got an amazing special guest. I'm honored to have him back on the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, a dear friend of mine, the one and only Michael D. Butler. Welcome back, brother.
Hey, great to be here, Daniel. I think I was the first guest on your show when you started. How many years ago was that?
Man, can you believe it's been over 3 years already? It's hard to believe we're already approaching episode 200. And you were one of the main reasons that said, we can do this.
Well, you know, so many people have pod fade. They go do 9 episodes and then they quit doing it. So congratulations on 300 episodes.
Yeah, actually, we'll be approaching 200 episodes, and I'm excited about it. And we're honored to have you and actually Beyond Publishing. You know, you've been blowing up all over the world traveling. You just came back from the other side of the world. And man, you're just doing amazing things. You wrote with Miss Universe in Canada. So I know the amazing human being you are, but do me a favor. Introduce yourself to the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, please, Michael.
You know, I told my dad when I was 7, Dad, if I could get on a plane and go fast enough west, because I wasn't a mathematician, but I was into science. If I could go fast enough west, the sun would never set. And it would be daytime forever, and I would never have to go to bed. And he would say, yeah, but you're not in that plane, so it's time for bed. Go brush your teeth. So I've always been a dreamer. I was really stuck in my stuff at 11 because I stuttered as a kid. And I think there was a librarian in my school that knew I was an 11-year-old kid. I'm stuck, I'm stuttering, and need some help. And she gave me a book written by an 11-year-old, and that book really changed my life because as I'm on my family farm in Oklahoma with 30 cows and my dog, I'm sitting in the pasture and I'm reading that book and I'm looking up at planes flying over. And I said, you know what? One day I'm going to be in a plane just like that, flying all over the world, speaking to thousands of people. And you've been with me to some of those places like London, UK, and like Pakistan. And I've taken people with me, and my authors have spoken on 6 continents, everywhere except Antarctica. And I don't really care for the cold, but maybe we'll go do that soon. But I remember that book cover because I don't remember the kid's name or even the title of the book, but it was a picture of a sailboat, of a yacht/sailboat. And there was the sunrise with the sun coming up. And this 11-year-old kid was solo gating that boat. And I'm like, I'm going to be like that kid when I grow up. I'm going to be a dreamer. And every disappointment I've ever had, every negative thought I've ever had, I'm going to turn my lemons into lemonade, and I'm going to do something positive with it because I believe in the power of the human spirit. You can change the world. I remember when my 4 sons were young, and my goodness, they were 8, 6, 4, and 2 probably. I probably made $20,000 that year. This was probably 19, I don't know. I got married in 88, so you know, by then it was like 96 when my youngest baby was born. He's 27 now. So back in 96, I mean, I was struggling to pay the bills and keep ourselves, you know, the lights on and out of bankruptcy and the bill collectors at bay. And I just kept dreaming and it just kept working. And I kept saying, okay, God, one day soon, I'm going to find the message and the brand that matches up with my expertise. You know, and I was doing ministry for a lot of years. And what I found was there's not much difference between being a pastor and being a publisher.
Yes.
You're working with people's stories, and you're working with people's insecurities, and you're working with people's hopes and dreams, and you're trying to get them on a bigger stage. You're trying to help them create income, influence, and income. And, you know, you find, I think, you know, there's a study, Daniel, and I know you just had the big 50 birthday. And there's a study that most men don't get into their stride of making their big money until they're in their 50s and 60s. And so it's certainly been true in my life. So I pray that you and I both continue to excel. But there's a lot of stories along the way where you and I and our listeners, your listeners, could have given up. Maybe it would have been real easy to give up. Maybe their friends and family encouraged them. Why don't you just give up, throw in the towel, walk away? But you know, the main thing is you never give up on yourself. You always believe. You know, success might not look like what you thought it did when you had the pictures on your refrigerator, but I think finding purpose, stepping into your greatness at the end of the day, every night when you lay in your head on the pillow and you're like, you know, I made somebody's world a better day today. And that started with me. I know you and I are big about morning times and starting your day right, starting your day with your confessions, being focused on your goals. And
well, I love everything you're saying. So ladies and gentlemen, this is where I want you to get out your pen and paper because Michael's going to continue to drop some massive wisdom. And you know what I say, when you write down what you hear, you retain over 50% of the content. So I want you to take notes, because Michael D, I'll tell you what, he's a world traveler. He's an amazing dreamer. But one thing that I want to, you touch based on, Michael, briefly, is that, right, as a kid, you had this dream, you saw this plane pass over, and your dream just kind of unfolded, and then you kept dreaming. But the one thing that I see knowing you is you take action on your dreams. So many people dream, but they don't do anything with the dream. They just keep dreaming, and they think that the dream's going to come true without any execution. How huge has it been for you, for your dreams to come true, right? Beyond Publishing is, like you said, has published books at 6 continents. You've taken your authors. That's huge, right? And I don't care for Antarctica either. But
that's good.
But the truth is this, is that you've executed on your dreams. Why do you feel so many aspiring authors? I believe this, right? I remember, I think it's the great Les Brown that says that, right, there's a lot of buried dreams in the cemetery, but I believe there's a lot of buried books in the cemetery too, Michael. What's your take on that?
Well, I got to meet Mike Tyson recently in Florida, and Mike Tyson says everybody's got a dream, everybody's got a goal until they get punched in the face, and there's a guy that got punched in the face a lot. And hearing his story and watching the documentary about his life and how he just had a mentor that believed in him, and when we get punched in the face, we can either take action or we can create a reaction, and the normal reaction when you get punched in the gut. And if you're over 5 years old, you've been punched before in one way or the other, told that you're stupid, told that you can't make it, told that you're not beautiful, told that you'll never amount to anything. It doesn't matter if it was a parent, a coach, a grandparent, a pastor, a youth pastor, somebody that sexually molested you, somebody that divorced you, somebody that maybe it's your own self, your own self-sabotage. You ended up in bankruptcy. You ended up with the divorce. You wrecked the car. You had the DUI. You bankrupted the business or whatever it was. You had a dream at one point. And if your reaction is to blame others and not look introspectively, it's very difficult, to look introspectively unless you get a professional therapist to help you, because we're not objective about ourselves. We're good at coaching others, blaming others, offering advice to others. But we really, if we want to grow, growth takes place in the introspection zone. And having a coach, somebody, I'll never forget, Daniel, after my divorce, I was hurting, I was broken, I had abandonment issues, addiction issues, anger issues, and for a while I self-medicated. I'm like, oh, this alcohol makes me feel good. I'm perfect when I'm drinking. I didn't have any flaws, but I realized about 6 months into that, this is not who I am. And so my therapist recommended, I said, I fired my third therapist, spending thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours dealing with my abandonment, my anger issues, and my addiction issues. And my therapist said, talk to Dr. Susan Ford, New York Times bestselling author. If she can't help you, nobody can. And I'm like, man, I know I've got $1 million business on the inside of me. I know I've got a potential to do $100 million with my company. Why do I keep hitting a glass ceiling? And John Maxwell talks about the law of the lid. You're never going to get past your lid, and it's important as a coach, as a mentor, to help you get past that lid. So I hired Dr. Susan Ford for $750 per half hour. This was 20 years ago, Daniel.
That was almost a month's salary back in the day.
That was a lot of money for me. You could buy a lot of groceries for 4 kids with that. And I'm like, you know what? You don't pay attention when you don't pay. When you don't invest in yourself, you don't take the time to grow yourself. And so I was on that call and I said, I really need you to help me, Dr. Ford. And she says, I can really help you if you want to. And I'm thinking $1,500 an hour. You've got my credit card. I'm going to make this work quick. And she peeled back the onion, Daniel. And in 3 minutes, she had me weeping in tears as a grown, arrogant, egotistical, angry, narcissistic, blame-shifting guy that I was. I want to blame everybody else except take ownership of my life. And she made me look inside at little 5-year-old Michael. And I learned this word from my friend Timmy Everett when we were sitting in the principal's office after we had got a spanking for breaking the windows in 2nd grade just because we loved it, the sound of the shattering glass. And we're sitting in the principal's office when he came out of Miss Sharp's office getting busted. I said, "What do you think, Timothy?" And I knew it hurt because I could hear him when he was in there getting the licks. He said, holding back tears, he said, "It didn't hurt." And I had never heard a kid say that coming out of Miss Sharp's office, because I knew it was going to hurt. It hurt the last 13 times in there. And she had convinced me I was going to go to reform school, but I came out of that principal's office and heck yeah, it hurt. And it really hurt that night when I got home and Bruce Butler laid into me.
Wow.
But I learned something that almost ruined my life today from a 7-year-old Timothy Everett, who didn't mean to try to destroy me that day. But I internalized a word that he said, Daniel, because I wanted to be tough like that. I wanted to be stoic like that. His dad was a highway patrolman. He had a big brother that was tougher than he was. And he said, and he went on to become a highway patrolman, he said it didn't hurt. And when my wife of 14 years, when our 4 sons were 10, 8, 6, and 4, I said something to myself. When she left, I said, didn't hurt. And what Dr. Susan Ford helped me peel back the onion in 3 minutes. I'm bawling my eyes out and I'm confessing. I mean, like
wow.
I'm tapping out in the octagon. I'm like, it hurt. It hurt. I'm tapping out. It hurt so bad.
Wow.
And she made me apologize, to acknowledge little Michael for the first time. And look at that little 5-year-old boy and all of his vulnerability and all of his pain and all of his innocence, and say, I'm sorry, Michael, that I didn't stick up for you, because it did hurt.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Think about what Michael's talking about. This is powerful, because ask yourself this question, ladies and gentlemen. Where am I being reactive? Where am I not looking inside? Where am I still blaming others?
Yeah.
These are all questions to ask yourself. You know what? Sometimes as grown adults, ladies and gentlemen, whether you're hearing this on iTunes or watching it on YouTube or wherever you may be around the world, if you don't take responsibility for your actions, then who's going to take that responsibility? And the thing is, there comes a point where you have to really look deeper inside, because your outer world is a reflection of your inner world, and the way we react, there's things that maybe you're the little kid, Michael, and you're saying that didn't hurt, but in reality, you're suffering under all this pain, under all this just hurt that you haven't dealt with since you were a kid.
Yeah.
Ask yourself that question, man. And you know, Michael, what I love about Beyond Publishing is that y'all extract these stories out of, it seems like, ordinary people. But the truth is this, is sometimes I've come to find out that we believe as human beings that we're the only ones that ever have gone through an episode or a situation in our lives. But then when you read it in book form, which you're so a master of drawing this out, especially with your ghostwriting that y'all do there, Beyond Publishing.
Yeah.
Do you see that stories and books get to heal people, right?
It's totally therapeutic. And the thing about it is, it's the anesthesia as well. You know, I had a friend who just finished medical school in his residency. You remember the Oklahoma City bombing that happened. Dr. Jim Meehan is a dear friend of mine. He's still in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He was there that day, and you can Google the story and read about it. He assisted in the surgery to remove a lady's leg to save her life. He was the attending physician on duty, and they had to extract her with the paramedics without anesthesia to save her life because her leg was trapped. And the body can do amazing things. But one thing I wanted to say about that was, some people are so stuck in their story. My brother used to trap animals because my brother really loved to hunt and fish. It's funny. My older brother, Kenny, he's a physical therapist. And growing up, all he ever wanted to do was live off the land in Colorado. We watched this show called Grizzly Adams. If you're old enough to remember that show, it's Davy Crockett, Grizzly Adams, all those frontiersmen that hunted and fished and lived off the land and lived in a log cabin. And that was his dream. But I can remember going with him a couple of times to check the traps that he had set out. I wasn't really interested in that kind of thing. I wanted to be a city boy. I wanted to grow up in the big city and wear suits and ties and have Rolodexes and Corvettes like Daniel Gomez. And I'm like, you know, the country life is not for me. So as soon as I could, I moved into the city. But I remember a few times we would check his traps and go out there. And a couple times I saw where he had trapped a bunny rabbit. And you know what these crazy bunnies do? Instead of dying, self-preservation, they will reach down there with their teeth and they will chew their own leg off, their own paw off, and leave that, what they call a lucky rabbit's foot. I guess that's how you make a lucky rabbit's foot. We used to carry those around in our pockets as kids when I was young.
I remember that.
Oh my gosh. I guess they call it a lucky rabbit's foot because that lucky rabbit was dumb enough or smart enough. However, I couldn't imagine the pain. All he wanted to do was save his life. But here's what I want to say, Daniel. In order for the therapy to happen, in order for you to die, not die with your book still inside you. I was on in Detroit the other day talking about my new best-selling book, Book Idea to Bestseller in 30 Days, which I wrote based on this concept that I did on YouTube during the pandemic, 52 Author Secrets. I did a 60-second video on the 52 most frequently asked questions I get from authors, and I help you write your book in 30 days on Book Idea to Bestseller in 30 days. And as I was on Detroit last week, I mean, that's a big market, right? I was talking about this very thing is most people get stuck in their story and they don't write their book because they're not Ernest Hemingway. But you know what? Ernest Hemingway he wasn't Ernest Hemingway until he wrote his first book. You'll never be Ernest Hemingway. I'll never be Ernest Hemingway. Not until you write that first book. So you write that first book to become famous, to create the momentum in your life. But I want to say this, Daniel.
I love it.
I planted a garden this summer in my backyard because I grew up with a garden. We had a big garden, and I can remember my dad would take my brother and I to shovel horse manure, because the horse manure is as potent and as rich fertilizer as chicken manure. And so we'd fill up the back of a truck. You know, everybody loves the delicious tomatoes, the delicious watermelons, and the fruits and vegetables from a garden, but most people don't realize when they go to a farmer's market to buy those delicious organic vegetables free of pesticides and all that, somebody had to dig through the manure, plant it, pull the weeds, water it. And that was the job of my brother and I. Before we could play in the summer, go play baseball or go to the swimming hole, we had to work all morning from 8 a.m. to noon before we could go play with our friends or go swimming. And it's exactly, Daniel, you've seen this, I've seen this. People get stuck in their story thinking that the manure and the minutia and dirt is where the juice is. And that's not where it's at. That's not what people want. What people want to see is the result, the person you became as a result of writing this book. That's who they want to see. And we're going to help you write a book in 1 hour. I used to take Book Idea to Bestseller, and it was 60 days. Write your book in 60 days. Now it's called Write Your Book in 1 hour. The next webinar at beyondwebinar.com. You can sign up for it. I'll give you free information on how to write your book in 1 hour. I basically take everything I learned over the last 55 years from giving 3,000 paid talks, many of them behind the pulpit, to teenagers, children, and adults around the world. And the same way you design a sermon or a keynote is the same way you design a book. You know, it's normal to have the self-sabotaging ideals and the lack of self-confidence because, you know, we'll have about 7 to 15% of our authors that will disappear on us and go missing in action when it's time to publish their book. And really what happens, the reason they fall off the planet is they're like, oh my gosh, I was so vulnerable. There's stuff in here my spouse and my kids don't even know about. And, you know, granted, you might journal about something or work with your therapist on something. It doesn't mean it needs to be in the book. You've got to ask yourself, is that going to help your brand? And you got to really be strategic and have wisdom. You know, in the Single Dad Survival Guide, I don't diss my boy's mother. I don't diss her at all. In fact, I don't even talk about her. All 4 of my sons have read this and approved of it. And I just provide resources for single dads. So you don't have to diss anybody to still be able to tell your story. You know, dealing with my heartache was separate. I talk about my therapy and counseling there, but I made those my issues after I took ownership. I didn't write that book while I was still angry and blaming everybody else. But I like to say this, Daniel. Your brand width equals your bandwidth. And there's an amazing, you know, everybody says, I want to write my book for credibility. I want to write my book to get on more stages. I want to write my book to get more media interviews or charge more for coaching and get more clients. And all that's great. And all that's true. You're 48% more likely to get a stage or get a media interview if you have a book over somebody that doesn't. So do that. What are you waiting on? Most people are waiting for it to be perfect. And I say, start right now, get it out. This book here, I had to get it out for some media interviews in August, and I got it out. It's got some typos in it. But next week, I've got my team resubmitting it to distribution. So the new file will upload, because I had to get it out because I had people wanting to interview me on that. So get it out there. You know, there's a scripture, I think it's in Proverbs in the Bible, that says, keep on casting your bread upon the water and it will come back to you in not many days. And there's a two-way transaction that happens, just like in giving and receiving. You know, we're very passionate about 1040 Impact, which is a nonprofit that I founded. You know, all of my board members, including you, Daniel, have come to Pakistan to see the work that we're doing there, where we're now caring for 394 kids ages 6 to 17 on a daily basis, primarily girls. There's some brothers and siblings, but it's primarily girls, in 4 safe houses with 25 staff. So that's a total of 415 children and staff full-time that we're caring for on a daily basis, feeding nearly 50,000 meals a month. And beyond publishing.
Did you say, but sometimes we don't realize the value that we bring as a human being. If someone's listening right now and they're thinking like, yeah, I've been thinking about writing a book, or what, and they're doubting themselves, Michael, what would you say to that person?
Well, here's what I would say. A lot of people thought the internet killed publishing, but the fact is readership is up globally. People are reading now more than ever. And just like the printing press brought us out of the dark age, it brought the Renaissance. What will the internet do? So I like to say this, and you know, the best thing to do when you write a new book is don't quote everybody else. Sometimes a new author has a tendency to quote everybody else. And the fact is, you want other people quoting you. And so I was the first one to say people are the new media. I said it first in my book, bestseller status, becoming a best-selling author in the digital age, which part of this content is in the new book I just released. And I just showed you book idea to bestseller. As I also said, if the internet were a baseball game, we're only in the top of the second. And for those of you that aren't baseball junkies like me, there's 9 innings in a baseball game. We're in the top of the second. You can literally pick your lane and become rock star famous around whatever keyword you want now, because the internet's still young. And check this out. There's 8 billion people on the planet. There's 4 million new books published per year, but you can become the go-to expert by simply thinking like a realtor. You know, I used to tell people, Daniel, back in the 80s, to think like a book publisher. Then in the 90s, I started saying, think like a movie producer. And now I'm saying, think like a syndicator, think like a content mafia king, a virtuoso, because everything that you're an expert at, what makes you an expert? Going through something makes you an expert. This was the first book I wrote, called The Single Dad Survival Guide. When I went through my divorce, you know, it was 22 years ago, and my kids were 10, 8, 6, and 4. And I was looking around online, Daniel, and I said, you know, there's a lot of resources for women. There's nothing for men. There's nothing. So I just wrote a resource book for men. That book does really well. I published it 5 years ago. Every Father's Day and Christmas, it does really well. But I realized something. Men don't buy books. If you write a book, 90% of readers are women, 90% of book buyers are women. So we marketed this book to the women that had a divorced dad, a single dad in their life going through divorce. So you want to think about not only who is the reader, but also who is the buyer. I mean, 70% of global book sales are fiction. And 76% of books in English are bought and read outside the US. So if you're writing a book for the first time, maybe it's a how-to book, maybe it's a nonfiction book about your expertise of getting out of debt, of retiring early, or starting a business, or whatever your expertise is, you need to realize that your reader maybe lives in South Korea, South Africa, or South America, and doesn't necessarily live in South San Antonio. So a lot to think about right there.
Well, so let me ask you this, Michael. I know, you know, you've got a lot of great projects going on right now. What's next, right? We're in the last quarter right now. We're about to finish here the month of October. What's the next big thing for Beyond Publishing? Because y'all are, like I said, when we opened up, you were just on stage with Miss Canada, and just so many great things. Because you inspire me, because you take action like no one else I've ever met. You're on one side of the continent, then you're on the other side, then you're in another country. What's the next big thing that we have coming out that we can look forward to seeing from Beyond Publishing?
Well, we do have authors in 64 countries. I've personally of those countries and spoken to many of those, and we've published 791 titles. Our 791st title just launched on Saturday, called Powerful Female Immigrants. This is 3rd in the volume. We're doing 4 possibly 5, but at least 4 books in this series where we feature powerful female immigrants from around the world with their story. But Daniel, you know, it's so amazing when somebody tells their story and puts it in book format, they don't realize they have a book around it. Every book you launch can become a coaching program, can become a mastermind. Think of it like real estate. When you look at big anchor tenants, they make money buying and developing land, having their primary retail shop in that location, but also building and subleasing to other shop owners in the area. You know, the big box stores, I'm not going to name them, but if you look at them, they make as much or more leasing and renting those other locations out because they own the land. And here's what I say. Every time I host an event, I host a stage, I host a live stream in our TV studio in Dallas or somewhere around the world, like I did with you in London or in Dubai or in Greece, where we're doing a book signing at Guadalajara, in Frankfurt, or in Tel Aviv, Israel. Everywhere we do an event, building the stage, I flip the mic because I'm all about giving my authors an opportunity to grow their brand. Many of them, when I ask them, who did you write the book for? Well, I wrote it based on my experience and my hard trials and whatever. You need to realize, memoirs don't sell. If you're writing a memoir about your story, people don't have the bandwidth to read your tough story of what you've learned and overcame. Even though it might be dynamic and exciting, you want to make it a how-to book, because the fastest moving categories of nonfiction books are how-to books. And you can still tell your story, but talk about the 5 core values you learned, the 3 steps that you discovered, the 7 things you implemented. That will make it a bestseller, and it'll touch more lives. You got to think what's in it for the reader, and then think long-term that most of your money doesn't come from the book, but it comes from the things the book does, getting you on stages, getting you on podcasts and media interviews, and all of the back-end stuff that you want to build out, which is your coaching program, your mastermind, your consulting.
Beyond Publishing and 1040 Impact are responsible for over 50,000 meals a month.
Yeah, I thought I had a weight on my shoulders when I had my 4 young kids at home, but I think the Lord was preparing me to grow my faith and my bandwidth to believe for this every month, because every month, like clockwork, I'm trusting the Lord, and I'm always saying, okay, it's the end of the month here. Where's it coming from? And it always, always, always comes in. And I think it's one reason, Daniel, that the company has grown and doubled every year since we started. It's been amazing. It's just incredible.
I love what you said. I don't want to, I think somebody missed that.
Mm-hmm.
Your brand width determines your bandwidth, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I give you a case study to prove this? Some people remember the series that my kids were reading when they were young. My 11-year-old Joshua, who's my number 3 son and my cancer survivor, 14 years cancer-free, thank God. Just proud of all my sons. They're all doing great. And he was reading Rich Kid, Smart Kid. And he's reading about starting a business versus working for somebody else. And if you remember in the Rich Dad series written by Sharon Lechter and my friend Sharon Lechter and Robert Kiyosaki, New York Times bestselling authors, there's 30 plus books in that series, and they've sold like 33 million copies. But what's so significant about that series is it's based on a parable. It's based on fiction. It's based on his rich dad and his poor dad, who basically a metaphor that he created, a fictional character that Sharon Lechter created that says this will sell because it's fiction. This was one reason we've ghostwritten 212 books, and why half of those books that we've ghostwritten are people love to read fiction and apply it to their life. And so you want to embed intellectual property into your book to raise the brand width. And I'll give you an example. In that book series, how many young people and millennials and young wannabe ballers know what a cash flow quadrant is? They know now. They want to own real estate. They want to own businesses. They want investments. They don't want to be clocking in and working for the man and working at McDonald's. They want to watch their stock portfolio go up on their smartphone while they're surfing Malibu. Okay. That's the beautiful thing. You can do that with your book. You can create a movement with your book.
I love that. I love that. No,
it all started with one book. The first book once you write that first book, right, Daniel, then the creative juices, because the most important thing your book will do for you is not just credibility. Everybody says that's number one. The number one thing your book will do is it'll be a supernatural growth unlike anything you've ever seen, as long as you don't duck out and go AWOL when it's time to launch. If you see it through.
Well, I'll tell you, if you're a business owner listen to what Michael's saying. If you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, you're in a real estate agent, I can tell you when we first did our first book, You Were Born to Fly, it elevated our brand. My speaking honorariums went from 1,500 to 2,500 locally right off the bat. Then when I wrote my second book, when Michael challenged me to write my book in 60 days, which we did, sticker shock right here. When we wrote this book, I was like, man, what's going on? Like 60 days, we did it. And with Michael's guidance, we were able to do that. And Michael knows what he's talking about. If you're thinking about publishing a book, if you're thinking about you need a ghostwriter, I highly encourage you, reach out to Michael D. Butler and Beyond Publishing, and they're going to help you to publish your book to get that right. You don't have to write it out. They're going to take the ghostwriting aspect out of it, and they do amazing work. How many #1 bestsellers have you launched, Michael?
Well, we've lost track of, I mean, there's about 33 nonfiction bestseller lists, and there's a lot more fiction bestseller lists. As far as the ghostwriting, we've ghostwritten 212. About half of those were fiction. And then as far as, so we've published a total of 791 books, and about, 38 to 40% of those were fiction. The rest of those were nonfiction. All of the nonfiction have been Amazon bestsellers, if not, Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestsellers. We've ghostwritten books for billionaires. We ghostwrite books for celebrities. There's a lot of people we ghostwrite books for that we're not allowed to say we've ghostwritten books for. But definitely, if you're thinking about, or if you're pricing ghostwriting, Joel Osteen and Chuck Norris, they pay $500,000 to have their book ghostwritten. We're going to do it for a lot less than that. And we're going to do it a lot faster than they have to wait on their books to be ghostwritten. But it frees you up as a busy business owner, because at the end of the day, if you're, Daniel, when my plumbing, I'm going to sell my house here. If I had a plumbing issue, I wouldn't try to do it myself. Well, I could watch YouTube videos and save money. I'm definitely not going to do electrical myself.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely going to call a plumber. It's the same way here, is we know how to sell books and we know how to write books. So let's just talk, and we'll give you a free consult at getpublished.beyondpublishing.net. And if you want to jump on the next webinar at beyondwebinar.com, we'll teach you how to write it yourself in 60 minutes.
If someone wants to get a hold of you immediately, what's the best way to get a hold of Michael D. Butler immediately, my brother?
Hey, that would be great. They could actually text me at 918-955-3227. We help a lot of people. There's a lot of people here at the end of the year that want to be involved with a great nonprofit rescuing kids from human trafficking.
Michael D. Butler, if you're looking to ghostwrite a book, reach out to him. We're going to have his information on the show notes. You will not be disappointed. Michael, thank you so much for being here with us. And ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for this week's episode. An amazing guest, Michael D. Butler, dear friend, mentor of mine also, and just value him so much. And until next week with another amazing guest here on the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen.